Chase, we are mere days away. You've been talking about it for a
Oh,
while.
yeah.
You've poked about it many holes as you could into something. Chris Pratt's Super Mario movie is going to
Oh,
be here very soon.
I thought we
And
were doing like a Christ is coming back thing
I
because it's
mean,
almost Easter.
how poetic that Chris Pratt
Christ
is
Pratt, please.
Christ Pratt as Mario. What is the best Mario game?
Oh fuck. God damn it. I have a YouTube video pulled up that somebody has like a list of Mario games, but it is whatever they think Mario games are, which is a different subset of what what a true Mario game is like. Well, okay. I'm sorry. I know this is your like fun little cold open thing that I should just have a quick answer to, but I refuse. I
That's
refuse to be quick
water is wet.
for the first time ever. What do you consider a Mario game to be?
A mainline Mario game is one that is either Super Mario Brothers. Like I would say Mario Kart would not be included in that. I would
Okay.
say I do not include Super Mario RPG in that. I do not
Okay.
include Mario is Missing in that. I don't include
Okay. Wow. Darn.
I don't
Really
include
cutting me
Luigi's
off the
Mansion.
knees. Uh huh.
And I don't I shouldn't say that. I could be I know it is technically or was going to like Yoshi's Island. You know, like I know that they were going to do something as that being like Super Mario. I think it is actually called Super Mario Brothers World
In
2.
America, it is. In
Yeah.
Japan, it's not.
So
I've been to a PAX panel that did a bracket, and they purposefully left off Yoshi's Island. I think that's a mistake. I think Yoshi's Island rules. It is.
we're not saying it doesn't rule. I'm asking what the best Mario game though is.
I know. In many ways, it still is my favorite Mario game. But I think if you want to have a strict definition of what a Mario game is, then I tend to lean towards 3. I'm a 3 guy.
I think Super Mario World is my favorite one. I think
Sure.
I think that's way up there for me. And I'm really the reason I bring it up is I've not watched more than like a couple of the trailers for this. I've tried to avoid a lot of the discussion. There seems to be some relatively positive things being said about people who've seen it so far. I'm mostly concerned with what are they going to bring in? What kind of Easter eggs are they bringing in? Is it
I hear it's nothing but Easter eggs. Like
oh
it, I've heard one review say it is so littered with quote unquote Easter eggs because they're not even really Easter eggs. They're just thrown directly into your fucking face. Um, but you know what? I don't think I'd mind that. I think
yeah
you know, especially when I talk about things like Star Wars, that I don't like to be pandered to. Um, I think this is an exception. I think it's fine. Do your fun bullshit. I mean,
yeah.
you've got Mario Kart shit thrown in there. You've
You think we
got
get a
some
Tanuki suit,
probably. I mean, I know
raccoon tail, a cape? What do you think it's going to be? All of
the
them?
cat suit shit is in there.
Yeah.
So I bet they do. I bet they do it all. We know Fireball stuff's in there. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think that's. It doesn't have to be a good movie to me. I think it just has to be fun.
Totally. So yeah, that's this weekend. I think that comes out on Friday, so I'm going to check it out on Saturday. But hey, we're the Casual Hour. We're here to talk
Yeah.
about video games. This is a What You've Been Playing episode. Johnny is on assignment this week, but joining me because he's a real friend, Chase Kinnicky.
That's what I do.
How are you?
I thought it was really interesting. Neither of us picked 3D Mario games. If we what if you went to that definition? Do you have a
If
favorite
I
3D Mario
had to
game?
pick a favorite 3D
Mm-hmm.
Mario game, oh boy, I have to decide if I'm going to go with like the technical best one or if I'm going to go through a nostalgia for me.
Yeah.
I would say Mario 64 is a very important game to me. I think that's probably my answer to that from a 3D perspective. Yeah, I'm going to go with that.
Okay. I wish I could be there with you. I just never had that game growing up. I played it at a friend's house a handful of times, but I have never really experience Mario 64. I have a copy now. I have multiple copies, I guess. I have that Mario collection that they got for the Switch that nobody can buy anymore. I know that's not the best way of playing it, but I that is one. I think that's on the backlog roulette. Is
Mario
Mario
64?
64? I think so.
I'd watch the shit out of you playing that game.
I don't think I need people to watch me suck at a platformer.
I'd watch that game.
I think, man, I think it's Galaxy. I think it's Galaxy 1.
That's probably the right answer here.
Yeah.
But
I also really like Super Mario 3D Land, the 3DS one. I know it's super
Odyssey was
easy.
a hell of a game too.
Yeah. I mean, Odyssey had some good moments to it. Yeah. But you know what? I'm gonna say a bold statement here, Bobby. I think Mario games generally pretty good.
They are. They are very good.
It's not a popular opinion, but it's mine.
Would you rather get a new Yoshi game? Not like a Woolly World, but like Yoshi's Story. Or not Yoshi's Story. Oh my god, we just talked about it.
Yoshi's Cookie. Yoshi's Island. Yoshi for the NES.
I'm saying
Yoshi Touch and Go.
A new Yoshi's Island. Or a new Mario game.
No, they've tried to make new Yoshi's Island games before, and they've all been bad.
Okay. All right. So here's what we got lined up tonight. We are playing, or we're going to tell you about the games that we've been playing. This is what you've been playing episode. We're going to be covering such things as, well, hang on. My note just crashed. So give me a second, and I'll tell you exactly what we're going to be doing.
Do you want me to tell you? We're going to be talking about such games as The Murder of Sonic the Hedgehog, Bases Loaded on Itch, Dredge, and some game named Hotline Miami. Some new video game, brand new video game. We also got a lot of news in the hopper as well. Stuff about Sony, stuff about E3, stuff about Zelda. I don't know who would care about Zelda here, but we'll potentially talk about it. So we've got a lot of stuff coming up. Pretty excited, and Johnny's on here, so it's going to be a good show.
Chase, what did you do to that poor hedgehog?
I murdered that poor hedgehog.
You've wanted to do that for a while, I think.
That's not true. I like Sonic the Hedgehog. I like the idea of Sonic the Hedgehog. I don't like some of his newer games.
What the fuck is this? And how is this allowed to be a thing?
I'm surprised it's a thing, to be fair. The Murder of Sonic the Hedgehog is a free to download, free to play, no microtransactions or anything. It's just free. Visual novel that I believe is made mostly by Sega, or specifically Sonic's social media team.
I'll pull up I'm gonna pull this up on Steam really quick.
I believe in the credits, I think the social team were the dominant writers for this game. So it's a really thin, short. What do you got?
11,000 reviews, overwhelmingly positive.
It's free and it's short. It's hard to get too down on it.
This is made by Sega.
Yeah, no, it is. I mean, they could not be made by Sega.
Crazy.
So it is a visual novel. It's a really short visual novel. It is pretty simple. The idea is that it's kind of a Murder on the Orient Express thing, but so you're on this train, but the idea here is that Amy Rose, who is the pink hedgehog that originally introduced in Sonic CD, it's her birthday, and she wanted to get everybody together and to do this murder mystery train ride. And so she's written up characters for everybody to be, so everybody gets to wear fun costumes. And then somebody is supposed to get murdered, and then the rest of them are supposed to figure out
somebody's supposed to die.
Yes, it's just Clue. They're playing Clue. And Amy Rose is a journalist in this. That's her role, which means she can't be the killer. She's the one trying to figure out who the killer is. And Tails is a detective, so he also can't be the killer because he has to knives out this bitch.
Holy shit. Hang on.
Yeah, what's up? What do you got?
What if it was Knives Out, the murder of
Mm-hmm.
Sonic the Hedgehog, directed by Ryan Johnson? That's the third
Yeah.
entry in the Glass Onion saga.
Uh-huh. Yeah. What
And
if?
it was a crossover that brought the Sonic the Hedgehog movie into that.
Yeah. What if Daniel Craig met Sonic the Hedgehog in real life? What do you think would happen?
He probably asked him about his original teeth.
Man, what happened to those original teeth? That's the real mystery. So everybody gets roles, and Sonic is like a captain of a ship, so he gets to wear like a skipper looking uniform. And while the train starts, some shit kind of goes down. The train like goes really fast, the lights go off, and Sonic is murdered, quote unquote murdered.
Good.
He's not really murdered, but people kind of think he's really murdered there for a bit. And so some people are playing the game while you play as one of the waiters on this train, and it's
so
your
you're
first.
actually cosplaying.
Yes, you are. You are absolutely furrying it up as
Great.
as like a little squirrel looking guy, and you're basically Tails' assistant as you go through. Amy's like run ahead, and she's doing all this sleuthing herself, and then Tails and you as the player are kind of following her path and talking to all the people that she talked to. It's fine. It's a totally fine little thing. It's like I said, it is
How
short.
long was it, would you say?
4-ish hours, maybe less. Like it's kind of presented like, oh, it's going to be this murder mystery where you have to play like a game of Clue, and it's not. You go from car to car because it's a very linear process. So you just go to car, you talk to everybody, you play a very simple Phoenix Wright style, oh, I caught you in a lie based on this evidence. And then they tell you the actual truth, and then you move on. There are some action sequences, so in the Phoenix Wright stuff where you want to tell somebody that you think they're lying, what happens is you have to play this kind of endless run. It's very simple. It puts Sonic on like one of the bonus stages, and you have to collect a number of rings to how do they put it? It's like to just collect your thoughts. So this is all like going on in your character's head of like, oh, collecting rings, and it's like, oh yes, that's now I can make my argument. And if you don't collect enough rings, you don't. You
Do you
don't
think
get
there'll
to
be
do that.
more
You
of
have to
these?
do it again. I don't know. I mean, based on this initial feedback, it seems people are really into it. I could see them doing another one similar to this.
Could this be on mobile, you think?
Yeah. I mean, the only thing is that you have to have the left and right to move Sonic and to jump in those action sequences. And those action sequences also, they have accessibility stuff where you can turn basically everything off. You can turn on invincibility. You can turn off the pits. So all you really have to do is just go and collect those rings. Eventually, I just did turn all that shit off because it got kind of annoying, and I just wanted to keep up with the story stuff. The story is fine. It's written relatively plainly, which I was surprised. I thought it was going to be coming from the Sonic the Hedgehog social media team, which Sonic's social media, I don't know if you've ever read it, is usually pretty meme-tastic. So I was kind of bracing for the worst, but it's generally just played relatively straight, and awesome. I think it's got some good characters. They have the characters are Knuckles, Vector, and Espio. Those are two of the Chaotix members that are kind of with Knuckles. Rouge, Blaze, who's from Sonic Rush, the DS games. Blaze is a lady. She's a purple cat princess thing, and she can do like a double jump.
Obviously, I don't know what Blaze is.
Yeah, she's from Sonic Rush. Those were DS Sonic games. Made by, I think those were made by the same people who made the Sonic Advance games.
Got it.
I don't know a ton about Blaze. And is that it? That might be it. Oh, Shadow. No, sorry, Shadow is also in there. And then Eggman shows up near the end as some other stuff happens. I won't spoil it here, but it is. I mean, it is not a clue. It is not a I'm discerning the mystery. It's not replayable really whatsoever. It just tells one story, and you get through that story, and you figure it out, and it's fine. I think it's a fun little thing, but it's. Cool. I'm glad I paid nothing for it, but I had a good time playing what I did play.
Fair. That's awesome.
Yeah. So
I have it downloaded. Steam, I might check it out.
Yeah, works on Mac and PC. I think it's totally worth just going through. It's fun. I actually really like the art style that they have for the characters. One, they get to dress them up in fun costumes, which is cool. But the best part to me is there's like a little texture to the characters. It's like It's hard to describe, but it's like they look like in the comic book or in the video games, where it's just kind of the flat 2D, but then it's got this little texture to it, so it kind of has a almost fabric-y look to over the top of all the characters. It's not so fabric-y that it's like Kirby's Epic Yarn or Yoshi, or the Yarn Yoshi game either. Yeah. But there's just that little bit of texture and go like, oh, you know what, this is nice. It's almost like an old comic book texture, where it's just like the texture of a page.
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about. Like a halftone or an overspray.
It's not quite halftone. I don't know. It's you should look it up. Just look up the characters. I'm telling this generally. You don't have to look this up right now, Bobby. But if you want to, go for it. But I think all the character design stuff looks really good, and that pulled me through the whole time.
Oh yeah, I see what you're talking about. That makes sense.
Yeah,
cool.
Good stuff.
That is the murder of Sonic the Hedgehog.
Yep.
What else have you been playing?
So you were talking about Terra Nil at one point, and you mentioned. I know we mentioned this on a quick look, and I think you mentioned it at another point as well, where Terra Nil had a demo version that was on itch.io.
Yeah.
That was like it's a different game. It's pixel based. It was kind of like, here's what the game could be, a proof of concept thing before they really blew it out to what it is now. And I thought, oh, maybe I should go try that version. I just, that could be kind of fun. And so I went to itch and was looking up some stuff there, and just kind of went down the list and found a bunch of other cool games. It had been a while since I've been to itch, and I thought, oh, you know what? There's a bunch of really cool free stuff here. There's also stuff that you can pay for, and it's, wildly varies in prices, but there's a lot of good free little cheap stuff. And one of those games that I found was called Bases Loaded. Okay. And I don't know if this came out this year or not. I think Twitch or itch is not so good with telling you when stuff came out. The comments, though, did help a little bit, where I could see comments from like at least a couple months ago, at least a month ago, looking at this again. But so it might be a 2023 game. I don't know. But Bases Loaded is pretty cool. It's a Vampire Survivors in that you're playing as this dot on this pink field, and you have to avoid the creep critters that all come from the top of the screen. But your little dot has a baseball bat, and you can hit a ball that is also on the field. And that when you hit that ball can collide with the enemies, and it can kill those enemies. And when you kill those enemies, it builds up a bar at the bottom. And when that bar gets completely filled up, you get a Vampire Survivor like bonus. Yeah. So the upgrades are anything like a second ball, or a larger ball, and they have little names for these. Like golf ball is the extra ball, so you get a smaller ball, but it's a second just extra bonus ball, so now you can be hitting two balls around. Or softball makes the ball bigger, 20% bigger, but it makes all the balls bigger. So even if you have the golf ball that starts pretty small, it makes both of those balls larger.
Let's keep talking about balls. I'm all for it.
I know. There are some other ones where the ball can shoot independently, so it can start shooting enemies. There are some where it can explode the first time it makes contact with a wall. There are just a handful of different things that you can grab. Um, and it's just like a simple little game, and you just kind of keep going, and you have a good time. There is a way to break it if you feel like you want to just get to
Oh,
the end, which is if you can make the ball big enough, get the softball upgrade a number of times, your character doesn't have any collision with the ball unless you hit it with the bat, so you can just stand inside the ball.
oh, and
And
then
then you're completely safe because the enemy, when
yeah,
the
yeah,
enemies touch it, they just instantly die.
that's good.
Yeah, so you could just do that if you wanted to see the end of the game, but it kind of just gives a you win thing at the end. I think it's really fun. It's got a really good bat sound effect when you hit things. It's super simple and easy, but I had a really fun time with it. And if you've been playing a lot of Vampire Survivors and you're like, I just kind of want a different little experience, this is the perfect thing. It's free.
Dude,
You can play it in a browser. You don't even have to download anything. It's just fun.
I just had an idea.
Yeah. What do you got?
What if they put Vampire Survivors on this?
On the play date?
And so you
I,
move
I could see it potentially working.
you move the D-pad and you
Mm-hmm.
aim with the crank. I could see it being fun.
Yeah.
Chase, you talked about the murder of Sonic the Hedgehog, and you also talked about that. It's cool. I just played it. Literally, just played a little bit of it. Base is loaded. It's on itch. It's free. It's very neat.
Yep.
Cool art style. Cool concept for sure.
And I've got a handful of other itch games that I haven't tried yet, but I wanted to get to my PC and play them here instead of trying to play it on a trackpad.
Yeah.
So there's an actually, you know what? There is one more that I do want to talk about. Sorry, I'm going to pull an audible here. It's called Randomancer. I think you'd like this game.
Okay.
Randomancer is
Random
a
answer.
like it's like random and necromancer put together.
Oh, okay.
Randomancer.
Okay. Cool.
So the person who makes this is Ryuku, I believe is how you pronounce the developer. They say in this action lane defense game, your units are your dice. Roll the dice onto the battlefield to place your units. So it's kind of a Plants vs Zombies.
I'm looking
in
at that. This is slick. I'll throw it in chat too.
So you have enemies coming in from the right side of the screen, and at the bottom of the screen you have these dice, and the dice have different on the different sides of the dice are different possible like tower defense emplacements that you can put, but all of them are, they're not all people, but most of them are people with different skill sets. So you have your cursor pulls those dice and then you throw them onto the field. You can also throw the dice directly into enemies and it hurts them, which is just a very good bit of game design, and they've got some physics with it as well. But once the die finally lands on its side and tells you, okay, this is going to be your regular warrior guy who's got a shield and a club, then you can pick that up on the field and place it on any one of the lanes that you want.
Nice.
And every time you finish a wave, you get an extra die that you can add to your die to the dice that you have at the bottom of the screen.
Oh yeah.
And so you get to the point where now you're just throwing dice as fast as you can to get them onto the field, and then placing stuff as fast as you can as well. Some of them are like a wizard that has a really long range, or a guy with a crossbow who can hit a kind of wider range at some longer ranges as well. There's a cannon that shoots very strongly, slowly but strongly, and can shoot from an incredible distance. There's an ice mage who can freeze and slow enemies.
Nope,
There
that's
are
awesome.
there are also consumable ones. There's like a bomb that you can place, and the enemies
neat.
can run to the bomb, and then it explodes. Or there's like
On
an
the
ice
lanes
cube
that
that does the
they're
same
coming
thing.
up through.
Mm-hmm.
Very
Yep.
cool.
So you kind of just place the bomb, and as soon as an enemy walks into it, it destroys them, and then it also explodes in an area of effect. It's really cool. I'll tell you, it's not fun to play on a trackpad,
Yeah.
because it's getting your cursor. Also, your cursor is like the very, very tip of your pointer finger of your little randomancer skeleton hand. And so if you just kind of put the hand cursor over a die, you probably aren't going to pick it up. You have to, it's it's really fiddly on specific, or it's really specific on where you have to pick it up. But I think if you have the precision of just a normal mouse, it's not going to be that much of a problem at all. And I gotta tell you, it's kind of fun. It's pretty easy, I would say, but it's a lot of fun. I think it's a really good proof of concept, and I could see this being a fantastic iOS game if they
Yeah.
wanted to bring it to mobile. But even so, I think it's really really cool. So I would say check out that one as well. I had a really good time with that, and I'm looking forward to playing it with a mouse and keyboard, or really just a mouse, where I can have that extra precision.
Man, I used to play so much Plants vs Zombies,
It's
and
pretty good.
that's a good ass tower defense game.
The
That's a cool
first
game.
one, and then they threw all that free to play shit in the second one and
I
kind of
know.
ruined everything. And then it turned into like a Call of Duty thing. Remember
Yes.
that? Garden Warfare.
All right, Chase,
yeah.
you talked about the murder of Sonic the Hedgehog. You talked about Bases Loaded and Randomancer. We should figure out a way on our preview episodes if we can do something with Itch. I feel like we need to bring a little bit more attention to Itch. There's a lot of good stuff on there.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's tough because it's hard for it's hard to tell when stuff comes out, and also it's there's not really that I've seen. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm not deep into the itch ecosystem or architecture, but I don't know if there are. Hey, this game is coming soon, so it's hard to just say here's what's coming out on itch this month. But I think this is something, especially after this experience, I would like to have more of a more itch representation in the podcast.
Yeah.
So I might try to play an itch game, every couple weeks, or have a
You know what I
handful
say?
of itch games that I play.
Scratch that itch, man.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I
all
also
right.
still have like a billion itch games from the various bundles that I bought for
so
things.
many.
So
Jesus.
there's a ton of stuff that's out there that's playable that I gotta go try at some point.
Here's one thing to call out. I know that you don't want to do this, but if you go to the desktop mode, you can get you can download. There's an app essentially on your Steam Deck that you can get for Itch. You can go into Itch and you can browse by Linux. And any game that's Linux, you can just run on your Steam Deck.
Sure.
So there is like a cool way to check out some of those on the go if you. I know that sometimes you're out of town, want to load some itch games up on your Steam Deck. But anyway, I have some stuff to talk about. I got an old game and a new game. Which one do you want to hear about first?
Let's go chronologically. Let's do the old game.
Chase, I finally played Hotline Miami.
Finally, you'd never played Hotline Miami before?
Correct.
Wow. Okay.
I've always known I would like Hotline Miami because there's so many games inspired by Hotline Miami that I really dig. And I know I'm familiar with it. I've always been like, you need to check this out. I think I bought it, or at least two, which I didn't know. Like, I didn't know which one to get whenever it hit the Switch years ago.
Yeah.
But I was looking for something to play on my Steam Deck. Those are both deck verified. And I gotta tell you, I think Hotline Miami is cool as shit.
Well, welcome to the club, buddy. It's good to have you here.
I gotta tell you, I think Hotline Miami is hard as shit.
Yeah. I mean, especially if you're playing on a Steam Deck, I imagine. I mean, I played it on. I guess I played it on my Mac the first time, so I was playing with a mouse that I had plugged in. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of Twitch stuff as you get into that game. I'm glad you didn't start with Hotline Miami 2 because they just the difficulty at the end of Hotline Miami 1 is kind of just where they pick up at Hotline Miami 2. They're like, oh, okay, well, you've played Hotline Miami 1, obviously, so we'll just make it ridiculously hard at the very beginning of the game. Also introduce the dual wielding and a bunch of other stuff and not really give you the time to wrap your head around it. And they just go, yeah, get fucked. We're just going to murder you a bunch. Damn. But Hotline Miami 1... that's a game.
It's so good, man. And I had played that Devolver mobile game earlier that has like all their characters and stuff in it. And I can't remember the name right now of the chicken in Hotline Miami. All the masks have names.
Yeah, the
Um,
masks have names, and then like there are people behind masks who
yeah.
also have. Yeah, I don't. It's.
Anyway, the chicken
I don't
head.
remember much about the story other than Fever Dreamy.
Yes, that character was in that mobile game. I need to play that. And I'll tell you really what did it. I saw a slight spoiler for anybody who's going to be seeing the new John Wick. Apparently, there's a scene in the movie where the cinematography really mimics an overhead view, much like
Oh,
Hotline
cool.
Miami.
Nice.
And I was like, "Fuck, man! Like, I want to play that. I really like Katana Zero. I liked Angerfoot when we played that. So I've played the different versions of kind of this in a way. I'm really digging it. That's the hottest, oldest hot take I could probably ever give. And I traditionally don't play a lot of older games that much. Like I don't. It's not that I dislike them, but I play a lot
There's
of new
too much
stuff.
new stuff to yeah. There's so much new stuff. It makes it hard to play. I mean, that's one of the reasons I made the backlog roulette thing.
Yeah,
Is this is an excuse to play old games. Yeah, there's just
but
so much new
it's
stuff. It's
it's
hard
cool,
to go
man.
back.
It's there's a 2012 game, and a lot of things have happened, and there's probably some people out there that are making games inspired by this that maybe are a little bit better in some aspects, but the whole package, the fucking tone, the style,
God,
all
that
of it,
music. The music's
god
so
damn, the
good.
music is so good. uh and people have just been chasing this game for 10 years now, so i I think that they should make a third one, but we'll see. All right, Chase, new game time.
Mm-hmm.
Dredge. You
Yeah.
join me for a quick look at Dredge. I beat Dredge.
Okay.
I am done
Nice.
with Dredge. I have dredged Dredge, and I enjoyed my time there quite a lot. This is an RPG, a very macabre RPG, where you are going through a loop of searching for 5 relics while picking up fish and upgradable materials that you can then go back to port and upgrade your boat and turn in your fish and make money and do some side quests. But there's a lot of stuff beneath the surface of this game that is rather icky and spooky and downright creepy at times.
Beneath the surface, literally.
But literally beneath the surface.
Yeah, I got it.
Um, there's It's a shorter game. I think it's like a 12 to 15 hour game. I did not get every fish, so I'm going to go back through, and I think this will be a relatively easy game to 100%. So I'm going to go back through and grab a couple of the fish. But we have a quick look up of this. You can go and check that out on our YouTube. It's youtube.com/casual hour. It's underneath our quick look section. You can find it right there. Chase and I had a hell of a time playing it. It's one of my favorite games I've played this year. I love the style of it. It reminds me a little bit of like a Dishonored, just on this like art style.
Mm.
And you called out Disco Elysium, which I think was smart. But I love the loop on it. I It's more of a puzzle, like not puzzle, but how would you describe the fishing mechanic? Because there's like different fish have different input methods.
Yeah, I mean it's a little Zelda-y where you're finding different mechanical keys to open different mechanical doors of
Yeah,
hey, this fish requires these things before you can get it and you need to place those into your boat. I do like the way the boat stuff works where
yeah,
it is kind of a Resident Evil 4 inventory game
yep,
where your boat has these different squares and you kind of have to Tetris your way into okay, where can I fit these fish to fit in right. Sometimes you'll have a very awkwardly shaped fish that you've got to place, but that you also have to place your equipment inside. So like the rods that you use to catch those fish, or your nets, or your engines, all of those things also have to take up space in your boat's inventory. And I think that's a fun thing as well. One thing that we didn't get too far into in the quick look, which makes a lot of sense, is story stuff.
yeah.
How satisfied were you at the end of the game with what it has to do from a story perspective?
So I ended up getting, they call it a secret good ending, but because of just like stuff, my exploration of the game, I ended up getting the good, quote unquote, good ending. I think both endings are cool. It does the whole thing where it like tells you 3 times, hey, we're not going to save your game past this point. We're going to save it right here,
Yeah.
but just know you're going to the end. So I went back into the quote unquote bad ending as well. The story, I think that if you are paying enough attention, you can pick up on things. They kind of ham-fisted a little bit near the end on like there's a big twist in the game, and they don't guard it all that well near the end. But I was rather pleased with the short story that they were telling on this. But it's neat. Like you get to pick up on there's only 12 messages that you can find in the game that are like 12 pieces of lore, and each major location you go to, you can interact with some of the townsfolk and get their own little personal stories. And it just sounds like shit's been fucked for a while. There's a new mayor. You wake up in the game, you've crashed into this island, and when you're there, you're met by a mayor, and they're basically like, hey, we pulled you in here, buddy. You're not doing good. Here's a boat you can use for the time being. Oh, by the way, do you want this? You can just buy this boat. Go get some fish, and you can pay me, and you can have this boat. And he like gets you going where you need to go. It was cool. I really, really enjoyed this game. It was a ton of fun to play. I loved all the upgrades on it. Very, very surprised. Like I dug the demo that we played on the Next Fest, whenever that was, but I did not anticipate this game to be as fun and interesting as I found it to be.
Nice. I will say I did add it to my Switch wish list after we did the quick look. I mean, that honestly, that doesn't say a lot. There's a ton of stuff on that wish list that's never getting purchased, but if that does go on a sale, I can see myself picking that up, because you did have a pretty ringing endorsement for it.
For sure, man. So that quick look is up. You can check that out right now. There is no longer a demo. This game is $24.99. It is currently on Switch, PC. I think it's on Xbox and PlayStation as well.
I think it is on everything, yeah.
Black Salt Games makes that and was produced by Team 17. I don't know if Black Salt's done anything else that we've talked about on here. I think this is kind of their first at bat. So
did you play it at all on a Steam Deck?
I did. It's fantastic. It is absolutely incredible there.
Nice. Pretty cool.
So I played, I would say, honestly, this is like 50-50 for me. I played probably half this game on my Steam Deck, and it worked out great.
Nice.
That is going to wrap up the games we talked about tonight. You can go back and hear us talk about the murder of Sonic the Hedgehog. We've got Bases Loaded, Randomancer, Dredge, and Hotline Miami. Chase, we got a couple news stories to get through here. Do you want to take that over?
Yeah, I can do Johnny's job for him while he's out. So this came out right before we did last week's podcast, but we had the preview going on. We had some other stuff, and it kind of just fell through the cracks. They showed off, and they being Nintendo and Eiji Onuma, showed off some Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom gameplay. This is probably the most significant gameplay we've seen so far. And it introduced us to a number of mechanics and concepts that we're going to be seeing in the full game that make it different from Breath of the Wild.
Yeah.
We both watched this. It was like an 11-minute video, if I remember right. Bobby, do you want to just hit some of your highlights for what you saw and what you got excited?
I needed to see a few things in this gameplay. Not that I needed them to do this by any stretch, but I was really curious to see, were you going to be using the Sheikah Slate from the first game? Like, was that still a thing that was happening here? Because obviously we've seen the whole hand, and I wanted to see what purpose the islands, or we now know them as Sky Islands, would be serving in this game above Hyrule. Like, I didn't know if it was going to be one-off things. So I really wanted to see those pieces, and of course the new abilities. The biggest question I had was weapon degradation, and I went into this.
Still there, baby.
It's still there, but I think that they've done a few things here to address, in my opinion, a direct response to some of the pushback that people gave on the stamina and the degradation of things. And they have a new mechanic called Fuse. And I got to tell you, I think Fuse looks fucking awesome.
I think it looks ridiculous in a way that I can kind of get behind.
Yes, that dude, just tell me, like, I am not the only one who was just, it was the dumbest thing I've seen in the best way possible when he makes that really long pitchfork and he straps on his fucking back and starts running, and there's like this fucking Doug Dimmadome fucking hat growing off of him. And it's just this massive fucking pitchfork. I mean, is he pole vaulting with it? That would be really cool too.
Yeah, it's very silly. So the idea here is that basically any two items, any two, I mean, I guess it's a weapon and an item. I don't know
He took a
how
stick and
exactly.
a boulder, and he took a stick to a pitchfork, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, I don't know exactly how freeform it is, but it seems pretty darn freeform
It
that you
does.
just combine two things together. So when Bobby was talking about the really long pitchfork, it is here's a pitchfork on one side, and here is this stick, like the spears that you could get from the bokoblins
Yeah.
in the first game. And so you combine those two things, and now it's just super long pitchfork that has this incredible, ridiculous reach. But it is also combine stick with boulder, and now you have this kind of hammer like thing that doesn't really look like a hammer. It just looks like
No.
a rock lollipop
Yes.
that Link is throwing around. It's not just I guess it's not just weapons, because at one point he puts like
Tease.
this plant like on the shield, on the
Oh yeah,
Hylian
the
shield.
mushroom spore, the
And
spore thing.
then yeah, and so then when somebody attacks and you block with the shield, it spread out the spores and made like a smoke screen, and then you could go in and do a backstab kind of attack on people because they're dusted and have no idea what's going on. It seems like another huge step of completely freeform gameplay.
Yep.
Figure out how you want to do things, and I do. I was not the biggest fan of some of the mechanics of the first game, weapon degradation being the biggest one, because my biggest problem with it is that I would get to a point where I've used all my good weapons, and there just weren't a ton of weapons available to me, and I felt like I had to go and fast travel to some places, go and grind some weapons, and then bring them back for the next encounter. And I just found that to be kind of a boring loop. That's why I was really excited about the Master Sword, because it doesn't break, but it gets tired, and that's
sleepy. It's a sleepy
more or
boy.
less the same thing. So having this game say, yeah, your weapons are still going to break, but it's so much easier to make weapons because now you just kind of fuse the closest two things to you, and you can get a relatively decent weapon for a bit. I could see that alleviating one of the pain points that I have.
I think it also, Johnny's made this a few times, because I'm very much against it. He was very much like, it made me go and explore to do things, which fuck off, Johnny, you were wrong.
Yeah.
But it does.
I mean, I did that with the shrines, where I just wanted to go find a shrine, and it's very easy to find shrines on the horizon. And so then it's just kind of that point of, oh, I'm going to go there. Or I know I'm not the biggest Bethesda game fan, but in a Bethesda game, you can kind of just look out on the horizon and go, oh, there's a tall building there. I wonder what happens if I go over there. Or the very classic, look at that mountain, I want to climb it.
Yep.
And so I never needed like, oh, maybe I'll just explore around and find some weapons, because that just sounded like a good way of wasting the weapons I already had if I came up with nothing. But yeah, sorry, continue your point. I interrupted.
No, I was just saying, like, the whole concept now that you are, like, you should want to have weapons blow up so you can build something even more bonkers when you do that. And I see this whole new, like, as you were getting materials to cook with, which was fun, but now, like, I'm going to look at this kind of like Monster Hunter. I wonder what part I'll get if I kill this thing, and how can I integrate that into a weapon? Like, those are things that I'll think about too, which is really fun. But I'm very thankful to have this freeform gameplay with it, and my mind's already racing on like how I will incorporate, because I'm thinking about the stuff you get in Breath of the Wild, which should be here. Like, well, if I have that and that, what would that do? And just not to stay here the whole time, but they did show off a few other new things. They showed off Ascend, which I think is an important thing to call out. The stamina, especially when it would be raining and you could not get to where you were, was a very big hindrance. And I know that trying to juggle so much climbing and exploration in this game was sometimes challenging. So they've added Ascend, which is fucking bonkers. It's a Kitty Pryde-esque, literally Link floats up anything that has a ceiling and goes through it and passes through. So if there's a cave system, as they showed off in the gameplay, in the side of a mountain, you could, in theory, just go to the top of the said mountain by entering the cave. It seems very dumb. It seems
Yeah.
wild and
I
very
it,
helpful.
it seems like a very cool quality of life thing that they can also control with their level
Yeah.
design,
Yeah.
because having to have a ceiling means that you can't just jump super high, or for those sky islands you can't just immediately zip up through a sky island. You have to be somewhere where there is a ceiling kind of right above you,
Yep.
and then you can only go to the very top out of that. So also, if there's something that doesn't necessarily have a top to it and it just keeps going, that's going to be a useless thing. I hope they keep that as a quality of life thing, and it's less of something they'll use for puzzles, because I could see myself getting very confused if I go into a room and there's nothing in that room and I go, oh, okay, I guess I should just leave this room where I was supposed to zip through the ceiling to come out through something else, if in like a dungeon. I think that could be really frustrating as a player. Maybe not. I mean, it's Nintendo. They'll probably figure out ways of implementing it
I
usefully. But yeah.
I will call out one more thing only because I want to just put it on air, have it
Mm-hmm.
documented that I'm saying it. They have a feature called Rewind, which they showed off as a method to get to the Sky Islands. A piece of them falls. You see that, you run up to it, you get on top of that piece, and then you use your rewind ability and it sends you where you need to go. I think that ability is not the only thing that Fuse is doing for weapon degradation. I think you might be able to rewind your weapons.
Mm,
And I think you might be
okay.
able to use that ability, especially on the Master Sword. Maybe not on everything else, but I think on the
Yeah.
Master Sword, you might be able to rewind it to give it its like restoration and spirit back.
Yeah, I think, hey, if you're a fan of Breath of the Wild, I think there's only excitement to be had when you look at Tears of the Kingdom gameplay. I will say, for me, I am not the biggest Zelda fan of all time, so take this with a grain of salt to begin with. But there is something where the gameplay is so freeform and so finesse based, of, oh, maybe I can smash these two things together and make it work. um, there is a like, we talked about it before, there is a keys open doors style of Zelda game that I really respect, that I think games like Breath of the Wild, and from what I've seen with Tears of the Kingdom, kind of get away from. It is less, oh, I got the cane of Samaria and now I can make these blocks and now I can use that in the overworld on this very specific thing, or, oh, I have the hammer now and I can
Yeah.
knock these things down and I can access this area. That those things don't happen really as much in Breath of the Wild,
Yep.
because you had the four abilities that you got at the very beginning of the game, and you everything else about the game was finesse. From, oh, I think I can get just enough momentum if I do the shield surfing here, or if I can climb up to this peak and then glide down. And I'm sure Nintendo thought of a lot of this in their level design, and built things in certain ways to go, okay, well, if they only have one stamina upgrade, they can access these places from this high peak. But I like the mechanical versions of the more top-down Zelda games, or even from like an Ocarina perspective as well. It's,
Yeah.
I have this equipment now. This equipment is very specialized to use in these situations, so I know where I'm going. Um, having so much freedom with what you can do, like, can often lead to that analysis paralysis. And
Yeah.
so I've enjoyed when Zelda is a little bit more mechanical in the ways it has done things. But also, we've gotten a billion Zelda games that do that. So to have a second one that is more free form, I'm not dogging. I'm not saying I'm gonna dislike this game or I'm boycotting or anything like that. But it is another Zelda game in a style that I am less interested in from a Zelda game.
This
That being said,
is
I also enjoyed Breath of the Wild, so I'm
yeah.
sure I would like this game too.
Uh it reminds me, this trailer gave me some Metal Gear Solid V vibes.
Sure.
The other thing I'll call out, May
A
12th.
game, a game I love, by the way.
Yeah, totally.
Has problems, but I do love that game.
This is the first $70 Switch game from Nintendo.
Mhm.
I believe right now you can still go and buy the voucher that gets you 2 games. And so if you pay the $100 for that voucher, you should do what I did, which is buy Advanced Wars 1 and 2 and Tears of the Kingdom at that lower cost. So that's a good deal. Or get Pikmin 4. Get Pikmin 4 with that.
Yeah, I mean, get anything and Tears of the Kingdom, and you're already
Yeah.
saving money on that deal. Advance Wars is just the one we probably prefer because it's the kinds of games that we like to play. But yeah, totally. That is a great deal if you know that you're already going to buy Legend of Zelda and probably another Nintendo game. It's just a great way of getting a bit of a deal on it. Let's move on. Why don't we talk about something lighter, like how E3 is dead?
Yes, God, man. I think you and I had a lot of conversations around this on the side. We started to see a lot of the writing on the wall where people were saying, "Yeah, we're not doing that." But I don't think, and I'll let you chime in here, Chase. I don't think that this is necessarily a reflection of any of the teams putting together E3 this year, as much as it has been a sea change in how companies realize now we don't need an event to tell our story. We've got free ways to do that, essentially.
Yeah, I think in some ways E3, the ESA, Reed Pop have a bit of have gotten a bit of a raw deal. One, some self-inflicted, where there were the problems with E3 of giving or having low security for a lot of journalist info, having some of that stuff leak out. Certainly didn't inspire a lot of confidence, but
Yeah.
I think more often it is what you mentioned, where Nintendo knows they can do a Nintendo Direct whenever and make news. Sony can do it with the State of Play. Xbox has their own thing that they can do as well.
Yep.
They can make headlines whenever they want to make headlines. Even Ubisoft or Bethesda. I know Bethesda is part of Xbox now, but there are plenty of ways for these developers to say, "Hey, we're doing a live stream now, and you can come watch it. And even if you don't watch it, the journalists are going to come and cover it, and we're going to get a whole news cycle out of this. And we don't need to compete with the news cycles of every other company in this one week."
Isn't Microsoft the only one that is still like doing this from a big studio or a big event? Like I think that they do this one. It's a live stream, but I believe that they're the only ones that are still kind of having a stage presence at all.
I couldn't tell you. It's I don't 100% know. I will say also the obvious one is COVID. COVID changed everything.
Totally.
It changed a lot of us to remote work or permanently, or at least semi-permanently.
That's where I'm at.
And for a lot of these companies, I think it also just changed the way of, oh, well, if we got through an E3 period where we didn't go to a show, we didn't set up a booth, we found alternative ways of getting our message out to the people, we just never need that booth again. And so I think it is kind of a perfect storm of all these things coming together, where you have a lot of developers who don't feel they need to be, or publishers and developers don't feel like they need to be there. But also, I mean, there's an interview with the CEO of the ESA on GameIndustry.biz, and I will say GameIndustry.biz I think is owned by the ESA or owned by a company that owns the ESA. I don't exactly know how that happens, but there is, I'm not saying they're lying to you, but I'm saying, take it with a somewhat of a grain of salt, knowing that they have somewhat of a conflict there, or a vested interest anyway. But the CEO of the ESA more or less said, "Hey, we could do a show. We could easily do a show. We could fill a convention center. We could have all sorts of booths. Like it could just be another PAX. You could totally do that, but that's not what E3 is for. E3 was this trade show event. I know it kind of mutated into something else near the end, but it is still a show that is meant for business, for publishers and developers to get together to talk about things, to share ideas, and turning it into another PAX is kind of a disservice to the name E3 and a disservice to the people who would use that service. So I guess it makes sense to not have it here. In that interview, they also ask, I know, okay, it's canceled this year. Does that mean it's canceled forever, or is it potentially coming back in 2024? And we got more or less a non-answer of, we're building it. We want this event to be something useful for publishers and developers, and if it continues to not be useful for them, we'll continue to not do it. But if we have a way that we can present it that allows for those interactions that the industry wants, then we'll do it there.
I
Because
really
the
think
ESA
that
at the end of the day is an advocacy group for developers and publishers.
I think Keeley stepped in and he's basically done what I went to E3 for. I've never been to E3, but what I watched the streams from E3 for, like I always knew, hey, in the summer you're going to watch the new shit. And I think Keeley's kind of tapped into that.
He's dominated the fan part of it. Like he has found like a piece of E3 that was a big deal, which was the big news, the press conferences, the way to get in the news cycle. That is separate from the PAX thing of more of like a community public group coming together, and that's also separate from the business part of it. I mean, there's definitely business that goes on with the Keeley stuff, but he has kind of extracted the big bombastic press conference stuff and the news stories, and he's found his little niche for that. And it turns out that niche is still needed, whereas the things that E3 needed are less needed now.
RIP.
Yeah, I mean that there's something about that name. Like the Summer Game Fest is not. It's not special to me in the way that that E3 is, even if it's
E3 should have just bought that.
Yeah, or the other way around. Keeley should just take the name E3. And
honestly, that's what it would be. Like that would make the most sense. But he's doing his own thing.
Yeah. It's an interesting situation. I know he was tweeting out there when the news came out. And,
he was tweeting 10 minutes after the news came out.
Oh yeah, like immediately. And a little bit of it came off as I'm dancing on the grave of E3.
Dude, he's had that draft for years now.
Yeah, I wonder how much pride he takes in that he. Again, I don't think he personally puts a bullet in E3 because they're different things that do. They're different.
Dude, that tweet separate pieces, that he put out was basically like, "I love them, but fuck them."
Yeah, it can be read like that. Very funny. All right, let's move on to more lighter news. Multiverses is shutting down or has shut down. It's okay. Here's the thing. Multiverses, this is the Smash Brothers style platform fighter that has a bunch of Warner Brothers stuff in it. So you've got your Looney Tunes characters, you've got your Scooby-Doos, you got your Game of Thrones guys, you got Gandalf, you got all these people. Yes, Batman, sure, of course, the superheroes, always important. They've had this game out. It was pretty popular there for a bit.
Huge.
They had premium currency out there that people were buying. There were skins. It was a video game. And then I guess people have slowed down on playing it. And now the developer is saying, yeah, that was kind of a beta. That was kind of, the game's not actually finished. And we're going to take this game offline now, and we're going to bring it back in 24, and then it'll be a finished product. I don't think you can sell premium currency.
No.
Well, I know you can. I don't think you should be able to sell premium currency and then say, oh, no, this isn't the real game. I think that's kind of shitty. But from a practical perspective here, the game has been removed now from digital storefronts. So if you wanted to go in and buy a copy of Multiverses, you cannot do that. The premium currency is also no longer purchasable for people who already own the game and are looking to buy more skins or whatever. You cannot purchase Gleamium or whatever it's called.
I don't know.
Now, if you do own the game still, the online servers are going to stay up until June 25th. and then those will go down. And then what they've said so far is that it's going to come back in early 2024, and that anything that you have purchased with the premium currency is going to come with you. And I'm sure that's the case. People would revolt if it wasn't, but it still seems fucking weird.
Multiverses. It's just going to get a pack of smokes. It'll be back. It's just going to the grocery store. It'll be right back.
I mean, I don't doubt it'll be back. I don't think this is hey, we're reworking Anthem. Look forward to the new and improved Anthem. I don't think it's that situation, but it does seem very odd to me that you would put out a game like this and not have any potential discussion that, oh, this is just kind of a trial period. I don't remember hearing any of that shit. So for them to kind of backtrack and say, oh, no, the game's not finished. We just wanted to collect some data and we'll come back with the finished game. I kind of don't believe that.
Yeah, no, not happening.
Yeah. Let's move on to some actually happy news now. Destiny 2 specifically, they seem to be doing okay. We've talked in the past. It was at the end of last season where Destiny's player count was really down. There were some questions of whether Destiny might be a dead game here coming up, and then Lightfall dropped, and that's not exactly the case. People came back in record numbers. Highest player
Johnny,
count.
thank you, Johnny.
Yeah, John and you. I mean, I was there all the time, and I'm like, why are you two here? But it's had its highest player count ever since going free to play. So free to play was around the Shadowkeep drop. So that was a new expansion, and it went free to play. So you had a ton of new people coming in. The numbers are actually pretty darn close to what it had then. So even though it's not quite as high as when it went free to play, you had a lot of people jumping in to see what this new expansion was. Now, we've also talked about this expansion and specifically the story stuff. A lot of people are unhappy. I am one of those people with the story that they're telling. Bungie has pretty freely admitted. I still read the This Week at Bungie posts that they do, and it seems they're very aware that people are not happy with the story and still don't understand what the veil is, and that they made some either assumptions or blunders on what people thought they knew or what people would accept from the story. So it's definitely had some growing pains when it came out, but I think overall, after you get past the story, this is just a pretty solid expansion. The Strand stuff has been pretty wildly popular. I've heard a lot of people say they're shocked at how balanced it is in the Crucible, in the PvP modes, because you had the new subclass Stasis when that came out in Beyond Light. That was so fucking broken, and they had to do multiple tweaks and patches to make that even semi balanced. But Strand has come out, and people are just really enjoying playing it in both PvE and PvP modes. The Season of Defiance stuff, the new seasonal activity has been pretty solid, and so just these numbers are good.
That's awesome.
It's Destiny's kind of back with, so it's fine.
It's fine.
I'm still playing a little bit of Destiny each week. It's not like it was a couple weeks ago where I was all Destiny all the time, but I'm glad that the game's doing well. I'm glad that they're continuing to build on that stuff, and they actually just put out a roadmap of a bunch of stuff that's going to be updating or tweaking in Season 21 a lot, even more quality of life stuff, and a lot of that stuff sounds pretty good. So Destiny in a relatively good place.
And speaking of being in a good place, what do you got for us here?
Yeah, here's a good place. The Nintendo Switch is the place to be on April 12th. That's when Pokemon Stadium is being added to the Nintendo Switch Online expansion pack roster. Pokemon Stadium, the Nintendo 64 game. The first one, not the second one, not yet anyway. That is coming to the service. Now, what does that mean exactly? So Pokemon Stadium, when it came out on the 64, had the compatibility with the N64 transfer pack, which meant that it could import your monsters from the Game Boy games. That's not really a thing you can do with this version. So this is kind of like a vanilla version of Pokemon Stadium, where you can only play with the rental teams. You can only play the cups and the gym challenge that are available. So you can't bring in your own monsters. And the ones that are there have specific moves and teams already built for you. But they have added online multiplayer for the battles, so that's
Okay.
pretty cool. And I couldn't find anything that said that you could or couldn't. But I believe you're also going to be able to play the mini games together. So like the
We should test
Clefairy.
that.
Yeah, we absolutely should. I love those little mini games. I love them both in Stadium 1 and Stadium 2. I would love to do maybe that's something we could do for a casual Monday sometime, is just jump in there and do a little battling. I love Pokemon Stadium. It's been one of my ideas to eventually do with my YouTube channel ChaseK Plays, to play just the vanilla Pokemon Stadium and try to beat those cups with the rental teams that you get without bringing in any of my overpowered teams. And now there's just an easier way of doing that. So
I think you should
that
do it,
might
man.
be something I do eventually. But yeah, pretty cool.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm excited for that on April 12th. And then our last bit of news. This is breaking news in a way. This story came out either late last night or this morning. But there is a rumor going around that Sony is developing a handheld gaming device.
Bad news.
Stop me if you've ever heard this before. Sony and handheld video gaming. It's always gone great in the past. They've made excellent devices. The PlayStation Portable, the PlayStation Vita, fantastic little
Things
systems
that were ahead of their time.
Yeah, totally. So nothing bad with this one, right? I mean, Steam Deck's popular. Playdate came out with some excitement. Switch is still hugely popular. I mean, there's no reason not to come out with a cool handheld.
This ain't it.
Yeah, there's a couple little caveats in this rumor. So one, this is codenamed Q Lite. And the rumor going around is that it requires a PS5. It is not a cloud streaming device, but it is using the remote play feature of the PS5, something the Vita could do with the PS4. It supports adaptive streaming of up to 1080p and 60 frames per second, which fine, sure. But here's the one. It requires a constant connectivity to the internet.
Dude, come on.
Yeah.
And not only that, man, because look, like Logitech had partnered with Microsoft and they have a cloud only device.
Mm-hmm.
But Microsoft also has a cloud only service. Like they have something. This requires you to buy this device, one, and a PlayStation 5, two, and you need to have home internet. It's not like you can be on Wi-Fi. You need to have the infrastructure at your house or your apartment or your place of business that can get your shit online. It's not like you're tapping into a server that Sony owns. You're playing your shit at home. Here's the other thing. You're away from home. If you have a new television, you have that, unless you know how to go in and turn that shit off, you power up your PlayStation. It usually switches the input to your PlayStation. So then if you share a television or a living space where your PlayStation is, you could be disrupting that. There's just so much here that seems like a bad idea.
Yeah, I'll say I've tried using remote play exactly once in my life. This was back on the PS4 days, and it was a fucking nightmare, and I hated it, and it didn't work all that well, and I never did it again. And I think that's a real bummer. I think Sony's made some pretty nice hardware for their handheld systems in the past, handhelds that I want to play games on. I get that you don't want to make a new store like you did with the Vita and have Vita style only games. You don't want to have that. You just want to. This is a very easy plug and play thing from Sony's perspective. Oh, they're just gonna have a different way of playing all the games they already have access to. Sure, that makes sense. But I just don't think people want that.
I could pay $99 and get the backbone branded by Sony. And I already have a phone. and put my phone in that and just stream and do exactly what they're going to be charging a premium dollar for a device to do.
Yep.
Fucking bonkers.
They're saying it's going to look like the DualSense controller and we'll have an 8-inch LCD screen to it. Sure, whatever. Yeah, as the resident handheld guy, this ain't it. This is that's not going to be be a pickup for me. I don't know, man. Just you should have done better by the Vita. You should have done better by that system. System had some good stuff to it.
Chase,
Anyway,
let's get us home.
That's it. That's the news. Yep.
Yeah. We've had a fun week. If you're watching, you can follow that link right there. But otherwise, we are just Linktree/The Casual Hour. And you can find all of our shit if you're listening. We got everything broken down for you. And the things that we do break down for you happen to be some live streams in this podcast. So Monday night, Chase and I got together and we played Terra Nil, a game we talked a little bit about tonight. But Terra Nil's fantastic. You should tune into the quick look that goes up tomorrow for that. But also go watch that live stream. It was a lot of fun. We have a quick look up for Dredge. Tonight was episode 319. We talked about a handful of games and some news. And as I just called out, Thursday's quick look is Terra Nil. So we got a lot of content there for that game. Friday, more than likely, we're not going to stream with Johnny being on assignment. Chase is going to be on assignment this weekend as well. I am considering, depending on how things are going, maybe firing up Everspace 2 and streaming that solo. But I think for the most part, we will just not have a stream Friday night, kind of given everything going on around these parts. But that is what we've been up to this week. Chase, what have you been doing?
I got a couple things. One, I have a new episode of Gamers on the Go, my handheld video game show.
Very nice.
Our good friend of the show, Jiggy-san, joined me as we talked about the original Game Boy and the Game Boy Color, and we debated and discussed and came up with a list of our 25 favorite games for that system/systems. It's kind of a where you draw the Mario game line. Is
Yes.
the Game Boy its own console from the Game Boy Color, or are they basically the same? I tend to think of them as separate, but there was no way we were going to find 25 games for the Game Boy and a different 25 games for the Game Boy Color, so we just decided to throw them together. That was a fun podcast. It's up there now. You can find that at gamersonthego.com. And then I have a different podcast that I do with another good friend of our show here, Pierce Corshane. It is called Pilot Program. Pierce and I are watching and talking about the first episodes of every television show ever made. We have done shows on In Living Color, MASH, Seinfeld, lots of good stuff. And our next episode, which should be recording next week, is on Deadwood, a show that I have not seen before. Pierce has seen at least the first season, he said. So we'll have one person who's a little unfamiliar and one person who kind of knows where stuff's going. And I'm looking forward to that. That is one of those premium television shows that I've heard many people, Bobby included, talk about and say very nice things about. But it is one that has completely missed me over the years. So I'm excited to both watch that show and then discuss it with Pierce. So you can find that at through the Linktree. That's probably the easiest way to do it. Because I don't know exactly what the I guess I can look it up. You know what? I can look it up. It's shows.acast.com/pilot program. That's where you can go and find the show and find the RSS feed, or just listen to the show directly in the browser. You can do all those things. So those are the things for me.
Awesome. Well, that's our show. We will be back live more than likely Monday of next week, where Chase and I will be checking out more games on Casual Mondays. But go back, check out some of our prior streams if you need to. Chase, thanks so much for hanging out. Johnny, we'll talk to you soon. Bye, everybody.